The Judicial Service Commission has congratulated Raymond Zondo on his new position. The newly appointed Chief Justice acted in that position after the departure of that's Chief Justice Mogoeng last year. Well, the Commission welcoming the move, contrary to its recommendation of Justice Mandisa Maya, who is the President of the Supreme Court of Appeal. Joining us now is the Commission's spokesperson, Advocate Dali Mpofu, Senior Counsel. Mr. Mpofu, thank you very much for making the time. Let's get your reaction in person on the appointment of Justice Raymond Zondo as Chief Justice.
Yes, no, thank you, Polly. As you correctly summarized, the JSC welcomes and notes and welcomes the appointment. It also notes and welcomes the nomination, or the intended nomination, rather, of Justice Maya. And, the President, took his time a little bit, but he made his decision. And that is how it should be.
It's no secret that the JSC had recommended Justice Mandisa Maya for this position of Chief Justice. When the announcement was made, the JSC, in your view, the President chose the better candidate here, or were there other considerations that you may well have not been aware of?
No, it's also no secret that when we made the announcement of the recommendation of the JSC, we emphasized, and there seems to be some confusion over this, which I don't understand. We emphasized that the decision is that of the President in terms of the Constitution. That is not something that is of the President's making. It's the Constitution that gives him the power to appoint. No one else can appoint, and that's what he has done. Everyone else can recommend and nominate, what have you, participate in the public process that he initiated, and so on and so on. But there's only one person, according to the Constitution, who appoints. And we've been making this point so many times. So,
Some people will listen to that with interest and say that the President, post those interviews, when he was taking questions from journalists in Cape Town, he made mention that the JSC went beyond the brief, because the brief was to advise on the suitability, but you went beyond that and recommended a particular candidate. What made the JSC come to that decision in the first place?
No, that view is also has been bandied about by various other people. It's the incorrect view. It's just the wrong view. And I've tried to explain it in simple terms only. The Constitution says the President must consult the JSC and leaders of political parties. So if you were a leader of a political party and you're being consulted by the President, and he says, I've got these 4 candidates, what do you think the leaders of political parties did? They all came and said, one must have come and said Zondo, the other one said Maya, President, another one might have said Matlanga, Justice Matlanga, another one might have said J.P. Mlambo. That's what that consultation entails. So why should it be different when it comes to consulting the JSC? The only difference is that the JSC is not a person. It's a group of people.
So in your view, I'm sorry to cut in your view, you take issue with the President because it's the President himself who says you went beyond your brief.
Yeah, no, the President is wrong in that assessment. There's no other way in which a consultation of a group of people can take place, except that group of people, taking a view by whatever method that they use. So again, with the political parties, to make it simple, each political party might take its decision by different means. Another one will take it to the top 6, another one will take it to whatever. That's their business. The President has no role in how that political party takes the decision. All he does is to get the consulted view. Number one. Number two, Section 178(6) of the Constitution says that the JSC determines its own procedures of how it does things. And that's how it should be in a democracy. So the JSC determined its procedures and gave the president its view. Of course, the president is not bound by that view. And again, that can be made very simple for people to understand. How logically, you don't even have to be a lawyer. If you have to consult, do you know how many parties are there in Parliament?
Well, it's
okay, there are 13. Yeah. And then there's the JSC, which is the 14th. Now, if you have to consult 14 different entities, how can you be bound by one of them? Then what's the point of consulting the others? Because if you are bound by one, then that should be the end of it. So it's really simple, this thing. So if you consult Dali and Dali, you can't be bound by Dali's decision, because otherwise, what's the point of consulting Dali?
All right.
Understand?
Let's move on from this point, Advocate Mpofu, and talk about the nomination of the Supreme Court of Appeal President Justice Mandisa Maya for the position of Deputy Chief Justice.
All right.
Interesting comments being made by Professor Cathy Powell, who says it's not a guarantee that if indeed she eventually occupies that position, she will automatically ascend to the position of Chief Justice in less than 3 years' time. Your view as the JSC here, as particularly the person that you had recommended, is it your view that she does stand a good chance of actually getting this position ultimately?
No, that's not for the JSC to say, and I don't know why you say it's an interesting view by Professor Powell. It's not a view. It is as it is. If it was automatic for someone to ascend to Chief Justice as Deputy Chief Justice, then why did we have these interviews just now? Because it would be automatic. It's a fact. It's not a view or an opinion. We would not have had this entire process if it just followed automatically. Is
it a disappointment that she has not gotten the role just yet?
For her?
For the JSC?
No, the JSC is not capable of being disappointed. It's a group of people who constitutionally make a decision, knowing that that decision is not binding on the decision maker, and the JSC is not capable of being disappointed or excited.
Right.
It just does its job. Yeah.
Let's talk about the process, therefore, moving forward. In less than 3 years' time, we will be back in the very same position of interviews for the next Chief Justice. Are there any elements that the JSC would like to reflect upon, given that the whole process was labeled, at least by some people, as having been reduced to a political circus?
No, again, that's another misunderstanding of the Constitution, really. The Constitution only makes it, there are 23 members of the JSC, right? Sometimes 24 if they're joined by the Premier. 15 of those, 11 are politicians, and 4 are appointed by a politician. So that's 15. Only 3 are members of the judiciary, and 5 are professionals, and 4 are professionals, 1 is an academic. So the Constitution deliberately put politicians or political appointees to be the majority, the overwhelming majority of people in the JSC. So how can it not have a political flavor when it is by the Constitution itself dominated by politicians? If it was they had 15 religious leaders, it would be religious because it's dominated by religious leaders and so on. So it's another fallacy that I don't understand. So if anyone wants to remove...
are making here...
No, let me just finish the point. If anyone wants to remove the influence of politicians in the JSC, then change the Constitution. It's simple. It's a democratic country. You can go to Parliament and change the Constitution and put religious leaders or whatever.
Well, I guess the point people are making is that the 4 candidates were asked, in a way, very political questions, as opposed to testing these people's technical abilities as to the position of Chief Justice. What is it that they're going to do differently in order to improve access to justice in order to improve the trajectory of a particular judiciary that is seen as having been in crisis. Some people will turn that and say what the JSC has tended to do is almost plunge itself into a crisis of credibility. So that's why I'm asking the question about what it is that you think you can do differently the next round of questions.
Okay, Paul. Well, firstly, that statement is based on just a factual untruth. Okay. Each candidate was given at least an hour. I think they were given 30 minutes, but they took about an hour, uninterrupted, to put their vision of what they will do in that office. Okay? So how can you say, instead of being given an opportunity to talk about the office, they were asked? That's exactly what happened in front of your eyes for a whole week, but you are distorting it. So each candidate was given that opportunity, and then based on their vision, if their vision was political or whatever, that's cannot be put on the plate of the JSC. The JSC deliberately, and this was designed by us, by the way, in a meeting which took place, I think, in November. It's not something that's in the Constitution. We said each person must be given a full day first. Yeah. Secondly, each person must be given a period where they put their vision. And then on the basis of that vision, then the questions arise. That's what happened. I mean, we were all here in South Africa when it happened. So to change it now, to say, no, they got there and they were asked political questions, you know, Mandla or whatever. When did that happen? It didn't happen.
No. Advocate
Mpofu. It simply did not happen.
Advocate Mpofu. Not a single person, at least those who watched these interviews, will agree with you, because there were moments that were clearly...
That's a different matter.
There were moments that were clearly not what that interview process should have been. Allegations that were sprung up on certain individuals that had to be expunged from the record. So let's accept that the whole process, or at least part of the process, was mired in controversy.
Yes. Okay. You see, now that's a completely different statement. If you're talking about moments over a 5-day period, which moments might have lasted for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that's different from what you were saying. You were saying for the 5 days, instead, that was your word, instead of being asked about the office, they were asked political questions. That's just false. Let's accept that first. Then we can go to the moments. Do you agree?
Fair enough.
Yes. Now, as far as the specific questions that were asked are concerned, of course, over a 5-day period, we're not saying that the process can be perfect. Nothing, even your interview here, cannot be perfect if it takes over for five days. So, is there room for improvement? Of course. This is a young democracy, truly. Everything we do, but everything, every time we have an election, for example, we must learn from that election so that the next election should be better. Every time we do, we've only been in democracy for 28 years, for God's sake. Yeah. So countries that have been democracies for hundreds and hundreds of years are still grappling with these same issues. How do you deal with the appointment of judges? In the U.S., for example, judges are appointed politically by a president of the Supreme Court. Is that the perfect system? Maybe not. So who are we to think that we now have the Rolls-Royce system? No, at least the JSC has never made those pretenses. Right. Of course, there's always room for improvement. And that's why, by the way, we're going to have a workshop. We've been waiting for the appointment of the new Chief Justice. We had already decided last year in October that we'd have a workshop, but we thought it would be better to have it when there's a new Chief Justice, so that the ongoing improvement of the systems takes place all round.
Advocate Mpofu, thank you very much for your time. JSC spokesperson, and I suspect that's perhaps some of what South Africans want to hear. Room for improvement. Thank you very much.
Well, for you and for us. Thank you.